You're listening to Not So Live from Asteroid G, your podcast that becomes just a dead old toy when Andy is around. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein. With me in the booth, as always, is...
I'm your buddy Mike, and I'm going to just go cover up the Andy tattoo on my foot real quick with some brown paint.
This week we are covering the Toy Story series, which, I mean, after covering a bunch of horror movies, it's nice to have a palate cleanser. Although I think you and I both were like, we're covering what this week? But still.
I'm fine with it. I mean, it's a series. I like it, but it was definitely, when you said that, I'm like, oh, I mean, sure, why not?
Why not, right? Different. Sure, it's something that's different. It's content.
Yeah.
We're covering the Toy Story series for a couple of reasons. One, it's a good series, but also we had thoughts during the sequels podcast we did a couple weeks back, and we wanted to elaborate further. But to do this, we have to, of course, get through the first movie, which is a good movie. I'm not going to say any bad words about it whatsoever. It was one of the very first fully CGI movies we ever got. In fact, it might be the first. But it's done well by Pixar. It has an interesting take on, friendship and jealousy, and all told from the perspective of toys that come to life, with Tom Hanks and everyone's weird conservative uncle you want to hate, Tim Allen, in the lead roles. And okay, I don't know how much we really need to discuss about the first movie, because it's good. I don't know, I don't really have huge thoughts on it, but I will say, as much as I hate Tim Allen, he had the perfect voice for Buzz Lightyear.
There's no other person that can do that voice. And, you know, just like Woody is Tim Allen, or Woody is Tom Hanks. There's no one else that can voice Woody. You know, there's some people that just, they are who they are if they're not playing themselves as an actor or actress. We can move on from this one, like you said. It's a great movie. I think it's fine. You see it's very raw in its CGI compared to, some of the later movies in the franchise, and even some of the Pixar movies that came after it, but it is really quite good. But you can tell this was, almost they threw this in there as a movie. I feel that would have been almost like an audition to hey, this is what we can do with this technology, and it turned out to be a smash hit. And good for them. But you can definitely see the improvements they made moving forward in the movie with the quality of just the appearance of it.
Well, yeah, they keep most of the humans like just their feet or their their lower bodies. You don't really see them all that much. I don't even think the mom gets seen fully until the second movie. They had just some very basic characterizations. They used the toys because the toys are easier to. It's like doing metal in the Iron Man movies. So much easier to animate than fully CG humans.
Right,
so it just doesn't look that fake. The movie still does kind of look fake when you go back to it now, because 1994, 1996 when it was made, and the CGI is not aged that well in comparison, but it was fabulous for the time. There's no underselling that. If they went through and remastered it, I think it would probably lose some of its very basic charms. It just wouldn't be right. All of that being said, it is sold on the performance of the two leads, Hanks and Tim Allen. I hate Tim Allen, but I wouldn't recast him here. Just like I don't think you can recast him for Galaxy Quest. His persona is perfect.
Wow, man, we could talk about that movie one day too. I love that movie. So good.
But no, the second one. So you and I have discussed this off microphone. And we alluded to that in the sequels podcast. But the second one is my favorite of the three. And until I talked to you about it, it was the weaker one for you. You liked number 3 better. Now, I think your thoughts have evolved, but let's hear your basic thoughts on it first.
So I enjoyed this movie when I first saw it. And the thing about this, I'm pretty sure that I saw this movie not that long before I saw 3. I didn't see this one when it first came out. I'm looking, when did 3 come out? 2010. It was maybe late 2000s, maybe even a few weeks even before the third one come out. My wife was like, "Hey, we got to go see Toy Story 3 in the theater." I'm like, "Okay, I never saw the second one." She's like,
the Tim Allen grunt.
Yeah. And I'm like, "All right, I guess we're watching that now." And it was fine, but I guess 15, 16 years, whatever later, it was like, okay, this is fine. And then when I got to see the third one, which we'll talk about next, that tied the story together for me. And at the time I was like, damn, this is really good. But upon rewatching them after, I did not give this movie enough credit the first time. I think you make a great point that we talked about off mic with the villain of this movie being much more compelling than Lotso in the third one. Prospector, and shout out to Kelsey Grammer for an amazing job as the prospector in the second movie. I thought his voice casting was perfect.
Perfection.
And a bit of like, a twist there at the end, because you almost feel like the whole time like he's the good guy helping out, and then at the end you see the heel turn. You're like, oh, I didn't quite see that coming, but I get it. And it just, it does really well on a lot of levels. It introduces some other characters into the franchise that became mainstays, with Jessie, the other, the rootin' tootin' cowboy girl or whatnot, and a few others that just really stuck around and just really made this franchise what it is. So upon rewatch review, this is, I'm not going to say that it's still better than the third one for me, because I thought that was the perfect end to a trilogy for these characters, and I hate the fourth one for that. But I think this is very good and much better than I gave it credit for the first time around.
So my issue with 3, which we'll touch upon more in detail there, but is it all stems from number 2, which I saw when it came out. And then, these were the 2 Toy Stories I had for, almost a decade. And the problem I have with it is that the second movie is all about Woody being like getting a tear in his arm and realizing he's going to fall apart one day, and learning that, maybe being with Andy isn't what I want, only to then be confronted by toys that never got played with, having a wistful moment and realizing, wait, I got to actually fill a life and help a kid out. And I liked that. And because of that, his growth there, he realizes all he wants to do is be Andy's toy. And that's like a huge character moment for him. And the third movie is about Andy deciding it's time for him to move on from toys, and Woody just being like, well, okay, let's go move on to a new kid instead. Like that's like there's more to that movie than that. But that's basically what happens in the end. Is Andy's like, oh, I guess we can move on to a new one then. And it's like they devote themselves to that girl, and that's great. Although we're going to talk about that as well. But it seems to violate the whole growth lesson that he got from the second movie. Are you a toy who wants to be played with, or are you Andy's toys? And if in the third movie, instead of going to the girl, he'd gone to Andy's kids, that would feel like less of a violation of the character growth he had than anything else they did.
I understand that view. I think that's definitely, I can appreciate, and I think it's a good point. And I think what gets me at the end is the way he gets that one last play with Andy at the end before he goes away to college, and the way Andy, gifts the toys to the little girl, I think is a moment also that Woody can take as understanding, like, hey, it was great. Even the little line at the end, that's so long, partner. Like, he knows he had a good life with Andy, but Andy's moving on. Now he knows he has to move on as well. And I think that is almost a little bit more character development that he got in the second one, understanding that he is a toy, he wants to be Andy's toy, he wants to be with Andy, and he kind of understands that, like, he has a purpose to bring joy to children, not just necessarily Andy. And I think he understands that a little bit more at the end. But I mean, in reality though, how can the scene with the claw and the fire not get you, dude? I almost cried in the theater, and I was like a 30-year-old guy, dude. it got me. I thought they were going.
I just knew deep down they weren't gonna burn. I'm like, no, that's not happening. I don't. It didn't pull my hearstrings the way it did for other people. But here's the thing. You
knew it wasn't ending that way. I know it wasn't.
They weren't going out like a bitch. Okay. But no, so here's my thing. The third movie is about Andy wanting to keep Woody, but wanting to get rid of the rest of his toys. So Andy already proved he wanted to be keep Woody. Let's underline and emphasize that right now. Andy wanted Woody to be with him. Okay. But Woody is an honorable guy. That's in his character, aside from repeatedly trying to assassinate Bud Lightyear in the first movie. He
almost succeeding a couple times.
He was a very honorable toy in general. So he wants to honor his friends. He wants all of them to go with Andy. And when the toys who get put up in the attic accidentally get thrown to be donated elsewhere. So Andy was going to keep the rest of them, kinda, but not exactly. It became this thing where Woody had to save them. So they all, including Woody, get donated to a childcare center. And then they have to go through the nightmare of that before almost getting thrown away and burned and blah, blah, blah at an incineration plant. For them to come back, and all of what Andy went through basically becomes, well, I guess we can get given away to some other kid. Really? Really? Yeah. You went through all of this and you're like, nah, I'm okay with being donated to this girl. Now, the girl's cute, and Andy's motivation is great. And I get everything you're saying, but it still doesn't work for me. And the reason it really doesn't work for me is because Toy Story 4 is a piece of shit.
Oh my
And
god,
and
that is the biggest piece of garbage. I
biggest
hate
piece of
it, and
garbage.
my wife and I fight over this. She likes it. I think it's terrible.
It exists, but
Yeah.
and it's nice. Like Woody gets lost on a camping trip with the girl, and he
Yeah.
meets Bo Peep and Yay, and the other toys go back to find him, and he's like, "Nah, bro, I'm good. I got a girl now." Bros
Yeah.
before bros.
Yep.
But my thing is, imagine if Andy had given the toys to his kid, so there
Mhm.
was inherited, and they could still see Andy, but they realized they had a personal connection to him and his kid. They've been given to
Mhm.
the girl instead. And so
Mhm.
when Woody gets lost, he has no desire to go back. Why would he? It's just a girl. She's a sweet
Mhm.
girl, but she's just a girl. There's no growing up with her the same way. Hell, it takes place a year later or something. He hasn't
Yeah,
had
give
that
or
much
take.
time with her. Yeah. Not the
Mhm.
20 fucking years that he went with Andy. And the toy is old. He probably got it from Andy's dad. So there was this whole growth into Andy. So
Mhm.
he's fine with being let go because Toy Story 3 said, well, you don't need to be with Andy anymore, so why be with this other fucking girl? Who cares?
Yeah.
If he'd been passed off to Andy's kid and then got lost, he'd fight to go back to them. He'd drag Bo Peep with him. The two of them
Mhm.
would get inherited. It doesn't work. It violates his character and the storyline.
Yeah, and just like you really feel like the whole message of these first three movies, and this is what really pissed me off was like
Mm-hmm.
Woody's like, we're gonna do this together, we're gonna be together. We may get put in the attic, but at least we'll be together, and
Yep.
yada yada yada. And then at the end, like you said, he's like, oh, I'm with Bo. You guys be good. We're gonna go rescue other misfit toys at a fucking carnival somewhere or something.
Yeah.
I just
Really?
I hate that this movie did so well. I try to like it. I like it for what it is. I like Pixar movies. My wife's a Disney fan. I watch Disney. I think as itself, it's a fine movie. If you name this anything besides Toy Story 4, maybe Woody's final chapter or something, and not tie this into being the fourth part of ruining what to me was the perfect trilogy for these characters, I could accept it more. But I hate this movie so much just for what it did.
Sorry, you're saying if you named it anything else, and we just done a Nightmare on Elm Street podcast like a few minutes ago, even though this is going to air a week later. And in my head, I heard two titles: Woody's Dead, The Final Nightmare, and then Wes Craven's new Toy Story. I'm like, oh my god, I'd watch both of those.
I would watch that. I would watch that. It's like I guess it's fine at the end of the day.
Fine. It's
Woody
fine.
gets some closure. He definitely missed Bo. Bo was a big part of the first movie, and she just kind of disappears after that. You see him when in the second movie when they're like, you mean like one of the toys says, you mean like Bo? And he's like, yeah, like Bo. We gonna miss Bo. And then he gets to be with her again and whatnot, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you took a character that was all about togetherness and family and sent him after a piece of tail.
Yeah, no,
is what you did.
it's totally if Dominic Toretto at some point was like, no, I don't care about cars anymore, bro. I'm going to go hang out with this chick. Like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't.
This is about family, and it's not anymore.
It's not about family. It's about pussy. So we're good. Yeah, no.
exactly.
Like porcelain pussy, but pussy. Like, yeah.
Crisp and clean.
That was wrong. Okay.
I will say though, I'm seeing, is it in here?
Yes.
I guess they don't have it. They have Bud Lightyear, Star Command, and Lightyear is also part of this franchise. Whatever.
I was going to cover those.
I do enjoy in between Toy Story 3 and 4 is little short they did.
Two of them actually.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one where the little lizard when they're at the motel and the car breaks down. I thought that was cute, and I could accept that as a story of these characters after they go to be with Bonnie and whatnot. And I would have lived just fine if you made that just a little one-off thing. But I mean, to make a whole nother fourth movie, Pixar, you don't miss a lot of things for me. This was a miss.
Yeah, it's interesting to look at what else they have. There's a weird few different things that they added to the series. There's Toy Story Treats, which was a series of shorts that I don't even think it's been added to the DVDs. So good luck finding them. Maybe they were, but no one cares. Buzz Lightyear Star Command, I know, had its fans for the 1 year that it was on, with Tim Allen reprising the role. Toy Story Toons, which was another one that was just an animated supplement. But then you have, oh my god, there's Forky asks a question. No one cares about Forky, Disney Plus. Stop trying to make it a fucking thing. But the
whatever when it comes to him.
Right, no, fuck Forky. But Toy Story of Terror is the one you're thinking of.
Yes.
Yeah. the Toy Story that time forgot, where he goes over with a play date with what's her face, and they play with some dinosaur toys. Both of those are cute. They're fine. Yeah. I mean, if that was how they wanted to extend the franchise out from this point forward, I would have been okay. It's Toy Story 4 that ruins it.
I would have been fine with that. Show me, a little half hour or a holiday snippet every couple years of these characters. Like, what you doing now? How are things going? And I would have been fine with that. But I mean, I gotta hate 4.
Yeah, 4 is no. And they're making a 5th one. Like, why? Like, no, everyone's already proven that they don't care that much about the franchise because Lightyear bombed. It just bombed. See, okay, so they're like, why did this bomb? Why didn't it make money? What? It's a Toy Story movie. Why didn't it do? Well, first off, it's not a Toy Story movie. Secondly, no one can explain what the fuck the plot is of this movie. It's Buzz Lightyear, but it's not Buzz Lightyear, but it's kind of him, and he inspires the toy that Woody plays with, but it's not, but it is. And I'm like, I already don't know what the fuck you're doing, and you didn't bring Tim Allen back for the voice, which I get Tim Allen as a douche, but you don't have Buzz Lightyear without Tim Allen.
And to not harp on what we did before with the podcast and Neverend I'm sure you can't have Freddie, no disrespect to Jackie Earle Haley without Robert Englund. So how do you have Buzz Lightyear without Tim Allen? I mean, they go hand in hand. You just don't.
And I think that like as much as Chris Evans is a great actor, I think anyone who watched the trailer was like, "That's not Buzz Lightyear's voice," was immediately turned off. They just don't care.
And that's what did it for me. I watched this movie once on Disney Plus because we have that, and it was forgettable. It just was.
You have to think. And Chris Evans, he's not a comedian. He's a comedic actor at times. He's fantastic in fucking Not Another Teen Movie and as the Human Torch, and he gets some really good slimy moments in Knives Out. But I
was gonna say Knives Out is one of his better performances that people don't give him credit for, and I'm glad you saw that. That's a great movie.
No, absolutely, he's great as the heel, but he's working off of a script. It's his like nods and his body language and the way he does things. He adds sliminess to it, but he's very much obviously reading off of the script that they gave him. Like, he's not like Tim Allen, where you just give him something and he's gonna, as a comedian, improv the shit out of it until it works. I imagine if they had just brought Tim Allen in to play Buzz Lightyear for this movie, he would have looked at the script and found a way to make it funnier.
Yeah, and I am not in any way, shape, or form going to give Tim Allen the kind of chops that Robin Williams would get. But
no,
at all. But I think Tim Allen is talented enough to a degree to see this and be like, you know what? Maybe this character that I've played for fucking 30 years would be better off doing this, and maybe putting a little of his emphasis and inspiration into it. And you didn't. And this to go from $1 billion in Toy Story 3 and $1 billion in Toy Story 4 and however much $1 million and $1 billion that the franchise makes off Disney Plus, whatever, this was a shit show and barely encompassed its budget of $200 million.
No, yeah. Well, and okay, so why does Tim Allen have the ability to do that? Well, he did 8 years of Home Improvement. He did, while doing that, fucking 3 Santa Claus movies, and he's doing a Santa Claus TV series. And he did, in and around the later half of this time, that sitcom no one liked, but about the dude who had 3 daughters and a wife, and it wasn't called Man of the House, but it was basically Man of the House. Like that. He has done sitcoms most of his career. He will take a script, like any good sitcom actor will do, and he will add his own sauce to it. Because in a sitcom, you don't just read the lines; you find the way to be the character because it's your vehicle. You've got to make it work. So
and these actors like him, who's worked on sitcoms in the early '90s with Home Improvement, was in front of that live studio audience, so he knew how to get that crowd going. He knew how to time things and to make things funny that had no right to be funny. What is that?
He'd milk it.
Yeah, but that's what made it almost endearing to an extent. And you take this voice who's iconic for this one character, and no shade on Chris Evans. He's a great actor, has some great things that he does, but he's not Buzz Lightyear. He's not my Buzz Lightyear, and this won't be remembered. It's already forgotten.
It's already we were going through the Toy Story series, and in the back of my mind, I heard this tiny voice go, "Don't forget Lightyear," and I'm like, "Can't I? Shouldn't I? Isn't that allowed?"
When I saw that was on the list, I'm like, I wonder if we're talking about this. I'm not going to say let's talk about it, but if he wants to, I will.
I believe we've talked about Lightyear longer than we talked about the rest of the fucking franchise.
I think well, you and I do a lot of horror, and we can show our love for horror. But when it comes to a train wreck of a movie, I think we can also lay into that a little bit.
Well, it's easier to pile on. You look at Toy Story, good movie. What do we have to say about it? Well, it's a good movie. I mean, I don't really have a lot that I could say about it because there's nothing to critique. There's nothing weird. It's a strange movie if you just take it on its own. Toys that come to life, well, that's odd. But we're so used to the concept now, I have nothing to add to it. But you look at a bad movie, you're like, well, let's just pile on to this piece of shit.
Yeah. You should have seen this coming, directors and producers. I mean, you knew what you were getting in for when you made this piece of shit, so you might as well let us talk about it.
Yeah, clearly Angus MacLean, who both co-wrote and directed this movie, should have known that a couple years down the road, you and I were going to make a podcast berating. Yeah. I mean, that was just on the table, wasn't it?
If this reaches his ears, I could do nothing but smile.
Well, this has been Not So Live from Asteroid G. Clearly fans of everything in Toy Story except, everything that came after Toy Story 3. I'm your host, Mike Finkelstein.
And I'm the other Mike. You guys have a good one. We'll catch you next time.
Yeah, we can... We can get some good info on the Toy Stories, which is just completely different from the Nightmare series altogether.
Does Mrs. Moon want to join this one because she's got feelings?
Nah, she's good. If it was How I Met Your Mother, if it was How to Train Your Dragon, I could probably drag her in for that. She'd be like, "What? You're covering what? Let me talk about Toothless for 3 hours."